Having a look again at the scenario story, we find that by the year 2035, also changes happen concerning consumer behavior. These consumption patterns change and brands and retailers need to react to that. In terms of product innovation, how do these brands and retailers respond to the developments? First of all, there are two different parallel paths according to the scenario story that happen. One that we already noticed right now is that leather becomes more and more innovative, high-tech materials. And an example we can find, for instance, is the firefighter hand glove, which is a very high-tech version of leather. On the other hand, focusing more on consumer products, we find one path that is the return to natural leather, in the sense that it is a unique material and a natural material, and that it is also linked to aspects where one material is not comparable to another leather material and can be seen as a sort of unique selling point. And this second path, the path to return to natural leather, is actually the focus point of this subproject, Leather Design Guidelines. Next slide, please. So what will be the overall impact in the best case? Well, first of all, of course, we are talking here about design guidelines, so the focus is on products. So this will lead to, in the best case, more sustainable products and is connected to different product development processes and purchasing behaviors. And as this product needs to be sold in order to be viable and sustainable business models, we are also talking about changing consumption patterns, which also requires different consumer awareness. But at the same time, this also affects business models and process innovations and cooperations, because we might talk about product service systems, we might talk about business ecosystems. And this is the overall scope of the whole sub-projects that we are talking about right now. Next slide, please. And let me emphasize at this point here that we are not talking about design guidelines that include technical aspects, such as which chemicals should be used or should not be used, what is the best tanning process and what is the worst. This is not matter of the subject here in this case, but the leather design guidelines focus mainly on formal aesthetic properties of a certain kind of leather, namely the more sustainable version of leather, in order to improve the design process. That is the overall goal of these guidelines. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. Because what are the challenges and chances here? First of all, using a more sustainable leather chemistry leads or might lead or might influence some aesthetic and functional material properties. So creating leather that is produced with more sustainable chemistry changes the properties of this leather. And this in turn affects also aspects such as durability, maintenance, or the need for maintenance, disposal, or the possibility to actually dispose it, or also affects possible recycling aspects. So for economic success of more sustainable leather products, customers' acceptance is required, because all these aspects I just mentioned are directly linked to consumer behavior. Talking about durability, talking about maintenance, these are all aspects that actually the customer needs to perform in order to use the product. And here the aesthetic design comes into place, because aesthetic design focusing on specific material properties that are typical for a certain kind of leather might turn out to be a unique selling point. And this is the focus point here in this sub-project. And closely related to this is also the development of corresponding innovative business models, because being a unique selling point might open different doors for different concepts, such as product service systems. Next slide, please. So what are the possible research questions here? First of all, of course, sustainably produced leather is a very big claim, and it is very hard to define. Therefore, the very first task here is to get proper criteria. What is actually sustainably produced leather, and what are the characteristics, the properties of this kind of leather? And of course, that is a very complex and difficult task, and the University of Applied Sciences has already done some preparatory work here, but that will be a cornerstone of the entire sub-project. From this on, we will then talk about how can the conceptual and, more importantly, aesthetical design of leather goods make use of these particular properties. And from this question on, the next question is, are there universal principles that we can derive from here that lead us to a set of guidelines? So what are the design principles that actually promote aspects of sustainable development for leather goods? And this also includes consumer behavior. So what are the design principles that promote more sustainable consumer behavior with regards to leather goods? And last but not least, of course, this is linked to business models and the question whether we can create new business models out of these design principles. And as I said before, product service systems are closely linked to the actual design of a product, as you might know from a lot of different product categories. Next slide, please. So what are the overall goals of this sub-project? What is the objective? First, and maybe most importantly, it is all about developing guidelines. This can be, of course, a written format. It could be an interactive website, but at the end, it will be some kind of abstract guidelines that should help the product development department and the design department, but also the product management, marketing, and sales to create more sustainable leather products, focusing and using more sustainable leather. And here the focus again is on formal aesthetic and conceptual aspects in designing these products. And as I said before, consumer behavior will be a constant category in these guidelines. And secondly, that is a consequence of this first set of aspects of the guidelines itself, is also the goal of actually designing new innovative business models and product service systems. And keywords that are important here might be to create or extend business ecosystems, which means that you combine different stakeholders, maybe from completely different economic worlds, so to say, to join together to create added value here. And the next question is also to what extent this might put us one step closer to what we would call a circular economy for leather goods. And with this, I hand back over to Karen. Thank you very much.